Okay, we're live.
Oh,
So
cool.
thank you so much, Kelly, for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah, it's so good. And Kelly and I connected. We were just talking about this. Kelly and I connected back in December of 2019. So, I mean, theoretically speaking, not that long ago, but I guess energetically and spiritually speaking, like lifetimes ago, right?
Completely. Before everything went bizarre, in so
Oh
many
my
ways.
gosh, yeah, that was right before.
Right before.
That
Right
was
before.
right before. Yeah, because at that time, I was planning my trip to Bali, Indonesia, and
Mm.
that got canceled.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I remember that was actually a pretty pivotal time for me too. I just felt like so much was coming through. Ram Dass had also just passed right around that time you and I connected. And I had like a visitation with him. I had just taken the sacred geometry class that like I felt like I was getting all these downloads, but there was something specific you said in that conversation that it like has like kind of resonated through this whole period with me. But you had said, because it was a call, you were doing like oracle reading, card readings, and you had said, what had you join? And I said, really just I was looking to connect with more healers, because I feel like the planet is on these like stilts and we might get kicked out, and like we just really need more light workers and healers and people doing all kinds of work, connecting, to support each other, but with what was coming, not knowing what it was actually going to be. And you said, I know it's such an amazing time to be here. Souls are choosing to be here, even if it means suffering, just to be a part of it. Like you said something like that. And it has been something that like literally that was such a, like, I don't know what it was about that statement, but it gave me so much freedom to accept souls exactly where they are in whatever stage they're in, knowing that even if they're coming here to suffer in some way, we all learn from that experience. We all gain, we evolve from that, so there's value in that. And that also it's not my job to try to come in and fix them. So I just think that I don't think you knew how, like when you said, it literally, I say it a lot at the, in a lot of things that I post or when I'm talking to my patients or, but it just always sticks with me. I just, remember, Kelly, it's such an amazing time to be on the planet that souls are choosing to be here, even if it means suffering, just to be a part of the experience. So that's how you kicked off our relationship with that.
Oh wow. Oh gosh, I don't even remember saying that, but like I'm so happy that stuck. Yeah, I have to remind myself of that sometimes too, because we tend to go in this tendency of trying to fix it, and we enter that little drama triangle, and then before we know it, we're out of alignment. And so it's like a conscious effort to bring myself back into sovereignty and self-empowerment. And yeah, it's not our job. It's not our job to fix other people, and that's their stuff, like their choices. And like I said, if they choose suffering in this lifetime, then that's what they choose. And I think that to some extent we can be a seed, we can be a light, we can be a role model and an example, but like ultimately at the end of the day, it's their choice.
Exactly.
So I don't really want to spend a lot of energy trying to make people do something if they're not ready.
No, it's almost a violation, when I think about it, even though, your intention is good. I always have this like little like vision in my head sometimes, like before we incarnated, there was like a big meeting, it's like, okay, I'll be the, serial killer. I will be the, because it's like, we're going to need these, people to bring things out of us, like, so it's in some ways, it's like hard to accept that, like from an earthly perspective, but from a soul level, perspective, it's like really accept this person's role. We don't know what it is, but it's here. It's a part of a whole, there is no light without dark. There's no dark without light, they're all interdependent. And so we have to remember everybody's place in that. We don't have to like it. We don't have to like the way it feels. We don't have to want to be around them, but it doesn't mean there isn't value in who they are, even when we don't like it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you're in New Jersey, right?
I am. I'm in Montclair, New Jersey, and I grew up. It's actually I was born in this town, but I grew up in the next town over, which is Verona, and I just moved to Montclair like 3 months ago, October, basically.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's so interesting because I grew up, I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I think I love that state. I think it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I think it gets such a bad reputation.
it really does.
It
But we
really
got everything here, we really do. We've got mountains, we've got rivers, we've got, the beach and the ocean. It's the garden state. So it's like
Mhm.
gardens, there's tons of trails. The Appalachian Trail goes through here. So we tend to forget just how we're really lucky. I think not only that, but you can kind of get to different parts of the state. Even, I've had to participate. Someone pointed this out to me just this week. From a legislative perspective, we actually, it's not that hard to get people to come to like where our capital is, like versus like New York, if you live in, or Pennsylvania, if you're in Pittsburgh,
Right.
to like these. So there's actually other advantages, even in other ways where, from a government perspective, it's relatively accessible, when people are, from an activist perspective, you can actually get more people involved as a result of it.
Yeah, I can see that. And you were telling me it's snowing right now where you are, right?
Yeah, so we're getting a nor'easter that was supposed to start tonight, but it's snowing now. So I don't know what I think we've had some storms where they did not predict the amount that was going to show up, and it really, how populated it is here, especially where I am. It's really densely populated. So I think they tend to over forecast it on purpose, just as a cautionary note because of some
Okay.
things that have happened. But yeah, I think we're going to get a decent amount of snow in the next 24 hours. So we'll see.
Yeah, so we're really like in the deep of this season of winter right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that was something that, we had discussed before coming on that was kind of present for you right now. So I would love for you to share your thoughts and what's coming up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as an acupuncturist, I really learned to value all of the seasons because of, just the way we look at the medicine and how any organ system or the channels and meridians or, they're all connected at multiple levels. So there's not just the physical, there's the mental, there's the emotional, there's the spiritual, like everything is encompassed in our medicine, which is what makes it really beautiful. But one of the things I really learned about that was, there's a season for everything, there's a season for everything, and I love connecting my patients to the importance of the season because, nature is always trying to guide us, like nature is bigger than anything. So if you don't believe in God or a higher power, I'm like, just believe in nature. Like nature will guide you in so many ways if you can just allow it to. And especially after going through, Eastern medical school, which was a lot, especially when I was in my 30s already. I wasn't, I was like, teenager or in my early 20s. So it took a lot out of me. And I just will remember that first winter after graduating, like, I was like, I am so happy winter is here. I can sleep and sleep and sleep. Like, I just felt like it was like a time of like deep recovery, but I really embraced winter, and in Oregon, I went to school in Oregon. I was living in Oregon for 7 years. And I almost didn't notice the seasons because I was in school, and I was almost grateful for the gloom of most of the winter because it did make me feel jealous that I had to be working in clinic and all that all day long. But then when I graduated, and it was like, oh my gosh, like this is such a reflective time, So in the medicine, it's connected to the kidneys and the bladder. So the kidneys and the bladder, are the water. It's the water element. So I always like to the easiest way I can describe the seasons is through, the analogy of a plant. So, when we have the seed, the sprout, it blooms, then it's in full bloom, and then we harvest, compost, back to the seeding, and so it goes again. So like, this is the time of year where we're getting ready to put seeds in the ground, and it's about choosing which seeds are we going to put in the ground for this next year. So it's not a time to be busy. It's not, and I always found it kind of unfortunate that we kick off like the winter in a lot of ways with all of these holidays, which tend to have us going in 100 directions and out shopping and spending money. And, and gathering, and it's a good thing to gather in the winter, but not in big party ways. It's actually more about intimate and around the fire kind of gathering, where there's an opportunity to reflect more. So, so yeah, that's the idea, is that, as my Qigong teacher would say, if you really slept like a ton through these 3 months of winter, you would only age 3 days in those 3 months. It's a time of putting water back in the reservoir. The kidneys and the bladder, like they're there supporting us through the active time of year. And like, this is the time to fill that reservoir back up, so it's, sleeping, it's reading, it's reflection, like less talking, less out there energy, I would say just look at the trees. They'll tell you where you should be. I mean, they're vulnerable, they have nothing covering them, especially out here. Yes, we do have evergreens, but what's really going on with a tree at this time of year is below the surface. You can't see what the roots are doing to prepare for this coming season, and the root systems between the trees and the networks and things like that. So that's kind of what I really love to get my patients to come back to and understand, because I think it's so important, because it's setting them up. Like, those are the seeds for the rest of the year. How are you going to set up the rest of your year? What are you choosing to grow? Have you even taken stock of maybe what you grew last year in some, an analogous way, but like to know what you don't want to grow. What plants became weeds and took over your garden, like which were invasive, which did you love and appreciate, which you never thought you did. Like, I am a gardener, and the pandemic really got me into gardening even more. And I even did a herbal farming apprenticeship this past year. And I like flowers, I like flowers, but I was all about practicality, like grow herbs and things we need. But this year I was around so many flowers, like I fell in love. Like, I literally fell in love with flowers. So like this year, I just can't wait to put flowers everywhere. They just, at times like this, to just look at a flower can like change your life, So, so anyway, like, that's really what I look at this time as. Like, it's meant to be reflective, to go more inward, like the trees, go into your root system. Like, what needs to be, what do you got to let go of? Like, what nutrients do you need to put in to strengthen those roots in whatever way? And that's in every level, like whether that's relationships, your physical space, your body, the body that you are in, what you're doing there, your emotional space. And when you do that, it's just amazing how much more, I don't know. I just feel like when you observe it and you're right there with it, you can gain so much moment to moment. You can truly be present, for what the gifts are. When you're not and you miss it, you tend to start creating a whole year where you're almost like missing the point all the time. You're in the past, you're in the future, you're not appreciating what's right here. And that's what I love about nature. Is I'm a big hiker and walker, and that's how I learned Chinese medicine. Was I would record my lectures, and then I would go hike and actually look at what I was learning right in front of me, and it would integrate in a way that can't just be done by sitting and reading in a book or being lectured at. You really need to see what this is in real life. How these each of, like, so basically water feeds wood. So if we want that growth and that expansion come spring, and then we want that sprout to go up, I mean, the wood season is hard. It's a very frustrating time, because now that seed has to, germinate, and then it's got to push roots down. It's got to sprout up. It's in dark, damp soil. There's no guidance. There's no sunlight. There's just trust. It's like a lot of trust in the beginning parts of spring. People think spring is like once everything's above ground. I'm like, no. Spring starts when the ground starts moving and the worms and the insects start moving the soil to allow this growth to happen. And so to me, like, you've got to prepare the soil, to get ready for that, to allow that sprout to be a little easier, because it's going to hit up against rocks going up and down. It's got to figure out, how do I navigate around those rocks? How do I get to that water source? Where is there a sun? I don't even know what is this thing that's going to feed me? I don't know what that is. So it's on a search, but until it breaks through, does it really have this support? And so to me, the water season directly feeds that process that comes in spring that we all get so excited about. But there's a lot that goes into that. And that's a whole other, that season's got all its own aspects, but that's why I love this time. I really enjoy the reflection of it. I love being inside. I love being alone, reflective, meditative, sleeping more, all of that is so good. And and where are you again? You're in Florida, right? So
I'm in Florida at the moment, yes. So I think it's going to be like 62 today, and hopefully the sun's going to be out. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, like I kid around with people, like in the wintertime, if I'm somewhere that's cold, I'm just like a bear. I just want to hibernate. I just want to be inside. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to sleep. I become so lazy. And I think like for a long time, I really judged myself for that, and now that I understand more about the cycles and the seasons, I'm like, no, this is perfect. This is perfect. I'm just gonna, read a book, and I'm gonna drink my tea, and I'm just gonna like regenerate and nurture myself. And yeah, because you're right. Like we have to nurture the soil so that we can create the space for the growth.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important also, going back on what you said about, planting the seeds, like what are your intentions? Because I think a lot of people, they don't even ask themselves that. They don't ask themselves like, what do I really want? What do I want to happen this year? And maybe they don't understand, manifestation and energies. Maybe, they're at a point where they don't believe that they deserve to have the things that they want. But, and this is a more, I guess it's a more recent revelation for me, even, that like, yes, we absolutely do deserve all of the things that we want. And, I spread that message with as many people as I can, because I think it's such a contrast to what's playing out in society and what has been playing out, so that's how I usually like to start off conversations with people, is like, what do you want? What brings you joy? Like, what makes you happy? And are you doing that? And why not?
Yeah.
Really thinking about that. But yeah, your whole analogy with the seasons and the growth, like, that was so good.
Good. Yeah. I mean,
all in my head.
Yeah.
So
Well, I don't know. I had a patient a long time ago. I used to work at a community clinic in Portland, and she said to me, "Are you an INFP in the Myers-Briggs?" And I'm like, I haven't done that, and I don't know how long. But I actually happened to go look, and I said, "Actually, I am." And she said, because they always speak in analogies. There's always. I find that she goes, "I am one too," but she's like, you can just always pick one out because they're constantly speaking in analogies, and that's how I always. When I speak to my patients, I'm always speaking in story and analogies, because it's how do we make something personal, if it's, just these concepts, but it's also just these cycles we completely ignore, and we forget that we're part of it, we are one with it. And if all goes well, we really honor that, it's meant to be darker for a reason, like it's meant to be, the yin time of year, it's meant to be dark. It's meant to be this, we're meant to be kind of, like you said, like curled up. And, like I think of foxes in the winter, they've got this like beautiful coat, when you see them in the summer out here, they don't look so great. They're much more scraggly looking, but there's like like almost this regal and luxurious nature to winter, if we allow it, where it's like just indulgence into self, and self, care, self-worth, to your point, what do I want to manifest? Like, what are these things that are like the soul work? What is my soul? What's the story it wants to tell this coming year? And how can I allow for that? How do I make space for that? And it's really only in the quiet spaces I feel we can get that true, like, not always. I mean, you could be literally walking around the middle of New York City and, boom, you get, a hit on something. But I just think things can unravel in a certain and slower, easier to integrate way, when we're quiet in the winter and we allow that, process. So like, I love, it's like, okay, nature's saying no one's going anywhere for 24 hours. Okay, awesome. So now I can pivot with that and say, I'm going to embrace that, versus how we tend to get, which is like, this is, now I can't do this. And now I got to cancel that. And it's like, look at all that energy getting spent just arguing with nature. Don't argue with it. Like she's she's our leader here. Let's let her guide us.
Absolutely.
You
And I
know?
think too, like, there's like the major seasons like winter and spring and all that, but then I think there's these like really subtle smaller seasons that are happening and throughout the year, these shifts, and they can last for like different periods of time. And with I know with some women it's like correlated to their moon cycle, but sometimes I'll have like it can be in the summer and I'm like going through a winter week,
Yes.
like that happens too, right? So it's
Oh
not
God. Yes.
it's not just about, oh, okay, so it's the summer and I'm supposed to be doing stuff all summer, or it's winter and I'm supposed to be resting all winter. Like there's also like these subtle like variations and fluctuations in it too. So and that's something I've learned over the last year, is to really like tune into myself and tune into my body and like, okay, like what season am I in right now? What's feeling right for me right now? And I could be in a winter whereas someone else is in a spring, and that's fine. You just have to listen to that. And
Yeah.
it's about like finding that balance, right? So it might be counterproductive to be in a winter for like an entire year where you're not
Right.
getting anything done, right? But I think there definitely is a balance to it. Like, if we have a period of time where we're super productive and we have a lot of output, a lot of energetic and creative output, then it's kind of like our body wants to kind of slow down for a period of time so we can regenerate until we create the next thing, because we can't just keep on going, doing. It doesn't work like that. Like that's the old paradigm. That's a very masculine way of being, and we do have to balance it with the feminine. We need the doing and we need the resting, and it needs to be balance for our own well-being and mental health.
Completely. I mean, that's the basis of the yin yang symbol, really, or the 5 element theory, so the yin yang, if you can see the image of the like swish of black with a white seed in it, and the opposite, a white swish with the black seed in it. They're completely interdependent. You cannot have night without, day. You cannot have heat without cold. Like, you know what I mean? It's like they literally, and to your point, you can break that. I mean, there's just so many, I'd call it like, lenses that you can look at this through. So, like the moon cycles, so we go through those 28-day cycles just with the lunar cycle. There's Mercury, cycles. In astrology, the other part of that I think that's so important is to realize that we all come in, we're all born at a specific time. So what was going on in nature at the time of your birth, which becomes part of your, like a blueprint, say, as to how you're here to express and the kinds of things that you'll engage with. And I don't know. I've studied astrology to some degree, very loosely for like 20 years, but very recently, because a woman that a dear friend of mine, who she passed away in August, but she was my like astrologer for over those 20 years. So I always kind of just relied upon her for like, okay, what's going on now? And what's going on now? But since her passing, I've actually felt this, she's like channeling through me this stuff, because all of a sudden I can open a chart and it looks like a play, to me, like there's all these players. Wow. That are like, look, this is this chapter, this is the chapter this person's going to be dealing with. And it has been fascinating. Like it's been like, I've always been fascinated about it to agree, but I would get on the phone with her and this, like, she was just like, she'd open a chart and it was like, she'd just seen like the best Broadway play. Like, she's like, hey, this and that, like she gets so excited about it. Now I get it, because I can see that. But similarly, I don't know, are you familiar with human design?
A little bit.
That's like another, theory group, like where again, we're all like, sure, we're all like part of a group, whether you're a generator, which is that kind of person who's here to respond and go. And our world was really, according to those theories, this world was designed by generators. They're here to respond, and they need to literally burn through energy to sleep at night. Like they've got to push through that energy. So they're kind of designed that way. But I'm what's called a projector, which is a very, very, like we're an energy type, so versus, so basically manifestors and generators are here to work on themselves, whereas reflectors and projectors are here to work on the collective. So just in learning that about myself, which happened only during this pandemic, has been deeply helpful, because, in my practice, like I really need to be working with others for me to understand myself. Whereas a lot of people just really need to be working with themselves to understand themselves. So it's by virtue of things like this, like just having a conversation with someone where I learn who I am. And so, but similarly, I also learned, because we're energy types, we're much more, I guess we have the propensity to burn out much more easily. So it's like really being aware of what I need, when I need it. And our energy tends to ebb and flow. So to your point, there's these times like where you're going to be much more productive. And there's times where it's going to be like, close, sign up, I'm not available, like literally at all, so it's starting to learn how can we all start honoring that as we're moving into this new paradigm of who we are and what this lifetime is about for us, and truly honor that versus using this outside world to tell us who we are and move us like machines.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I've found that with myself, I've done a lot of internal work alone, but there's also been a ton of value for me in the reflections and the mirroring off of other people, and having these experiences with other people. Like, I mean, especially over the last year, like in 2021, I feel like that's all I did is, I was putting myself in these situations where I was, seeing these reflections and like, okay, like why am I in this situation? Like, why am I allowing this situation to happen? Like, what's missing within me? Like, what is it? Because like we are always the common denominator in every equation. It's us.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I mean, it's so easy to put the blame on the other people, like, oh, they're a jerk and they're a narcissist and blah, blah, blah. Right. And that might be true to some extent, but it's like, okay, but we are allowing ourselves to be entangled with that person or in that environment. Like, we have to take the personal responsibility for that. I mean, unless you're, if you're a child, that's completely different. Like if you're dependent on others, that's a whole nother story. But like once you're an adult and you can actually take care of yourself, it's like, taking that personal responsibility. So there was a ton of, oh my gosh, there was so much growth in the past year for me in just, through other people, through my experiences with other people and what I was recognizing in myself. So, and it wasn't easy and it wasn't comfortable at all. It was very uncomfortable most of the time.
Deeply.
But I'm still thankful and I'm still grateful for it because I still learn so much. So much.
Yeah. What is that like? I'm just curious for you, like in this moment, where do you feel like, because I always say, okay, we're in this present moment. So like, where are you in this present moment with all that you've like kind of gained and learned from that experience?
Oh gosh.
I know that's a big question, but even if you could just boil it down to just an idea of like,
big question, Kelly.
Yeah.
I love your questions though. I mean, I'd say I'm just understanding of it. I'm at peace with it. I'm like, okay, like that's why that had to happen, because there were some things that I still needed to see within myself and some things that I still needed to recognize and learn and bring to my awareness. Which is completely different than how I might have felt at the time. But right now I'm very grateful for all of it. And now planting the seeds, making the choices to not have those types of experiences anymore, to not have those, the hard lessons, because sometimes I feel like we think that we've learned something and then it keeps coming back to us. And I'm like, why I thought I worked through this. Like, why is this still coming back? So like, I do feel now like I'm finally reaching this point with it where it's not going to come back. Like it's just this feeling, knowing within me. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. Yes.
Like, I don't think I have to do it anymore. Like I think I got it.
Yeah.
I think I got it. But it's been a really interesting time. I've had a really great year so far. Yeah. it's been a really interesting time, especially lately, especially lately.
Yeah. Yeah. That's important. I mean, it's important. I think it's interesting you said that too, because I've been going through a very, particularly this fall was like loaded with what you're talking about for me, just places I would get triggered, literally. You probably, whether you realize it or not, you like call them out, almost like dealing with a narcissist, dealing with, like these lots of different things. And to your point, it also, just how you just said that in this, like, I don't have to keep doing this, there's lots of ways to, you can cut things off, you can, kind of cut ties, but we can protect ourselves too, to a different degree of going like, this is what I'm allowing in and this is not what I'm allowing in. I've completed that, I'm complete with this version of myself, because for me, it invites out a lot of self-righteousness that can come out of me that I gotta be like, girl, that can be very projector too. Like you're just spewing this stuff at people and feeling very right about it, because we do have the ability to kind of see a long-term, longer term and sort of wider, and certain, that's kind of that's the gift of a projector versus like the generator. The gift is the ability to constantly be able to respond, and a manifestor to initiate. So, but the funny thing I loved about learning about a projector was this idea of waiting for the invitation versus coming, like feeling the need to have to contribute a voice somewhere where maybe I'm not invited there. Like really, I have not been invited. And so it's like taking this approach of like, wait till you're invited to something, and that's going to be hard, because you want to be able to, you think you're contributing, back to that original part of our conversation, but maybe you're not, and maybe people, it's time to, complete some things with people, like, be grateful for those experiences, as you said, that have happened, that have shown you things, but you can also say, okay, and now we're done. And that can be sad, and it can bring up grief, and it can bring up all of that too. But I've just been I've been realizing I want to be more mindful of the kinds of things I put out there, because I don't want to invite in anything that's like people's really triggered responses. I don't need to trigger people. That's not, whether they that's their responsibility, whether they're triggered or not. But I can be even more self-aware around, if I'm going to say this, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to engage in this way, taking responsibility for what that could look like, and are there other ways I could be utilizing my energy or utilizing my perspective that supports people versus, bringing them to this, like, it's time for you to learn, you're whatever, like pushing them into suffering if I don't need to, so I go back to that time when you and I first met, and I had this whole experience with Ram Dass, and basically it's about love. That's it. It is about love. And so if whatever's coming out of your mouth is not coming from love, you're done with it.
Yeah. Yep. You're totally right. Yeah. So could you give like maybe an example of what you're talking about, like a way that you might serve people without like, coming at them like that?
Yeah, like for, just, obviously there's plenty of examples we can look at, especially through this 2 years of the polar places we've gone, like this is right, this is wrong, cancel them out, this, like just all this behavior. There's no love in any of that, like there's just righteousness. I always say it's either you're trying to be, you're either trying to be right or you're trying to be love. You're either bringing on fear or you're bringing in love. Like it's like, so as an example, just I could put out a message that's like just yesterday, it was just reminding people that like being a bully is being a bully any way you look at it. Like, shaming people is shaming people, no matter how right you think you are about something, and even if the majority of people that you're surrounded by, are agreeing with you. And we see this over and over again in schools, but where are kids getting this behavior from? Like where are they picking up this modeling from? I really feel our world is going from the love of power to the power of love. Like that's the transition we're in, that paradigm shift. And so it's in the simplest of things, so I had an experience last year where I engaged with there was a woman. I was, was kind of having my own personal, I was having a little pity party in my own head. It was right around the holidays, right? It was like December 23rd. And, I'm a single, I don't have children, what I love about my work is I love, like, my favorite days are when I'm working with patients. I feel so, like, of service. I feel so myself. I feel, the most hopeful I do about the world when I'm engaging in that way. But this particular day was, and I had a full day of that, where there was just, everybody was kind of coming in and even reflecting back to me how the work from the year together had really supported them, which felt great. But then I usually find immediately after a day of, like, that kind of highness, like feeling so high from that, the next day it's like, whew, down the other, because I have no one to, like, it's like, oh, there's no one to, like, share that with. And I'm having this kind of unique experience, but, like, who nobody can appreciate it the way that I can. So you start to feel actually the opposite, so I was having one of those kinds of days. And because I was feeling that way, I was like annoyed at myself. Like, I was like, can you just, like, like, okay, sure. You know what that's about, but, like, be present. What's in front of you? You're caught up in your head. And so I literally was like, divine, universe, whatever, can you engage with me right now? Show me what I need to see. And so, like, I literally picked my head up and I had this whole experience with this woman who was homeless, where and I honestly sometimes wonder if she was real, like, if it was like an angel or somebody that, like, just, showed up because of the way that it went down. But it was this, how it started was, she was crossing, I was, like, going in one direction, she was crossing the street. So she was going to be walking, like, kind of right behind me, coming in this way. And we had met eyes when she crossed the street, and we smiled, and, we both, like, acknowledged each other, said hello. And she goes, oh, and I said, I know. I just turned around and went, I know. I said, she goes, this day. I go, I know, it's day. What is with this day? So we just started walking together, and she starts to share, what was going on for her. She was like, well, actually, I'm trying to get food. She had gone to these churches, and what we think is funny, like we think we get all these canned goods to people, but we forget homeless people, they don't have a stove, they don't have, can opener, like, there's, like, these, we don't think of the practicality of, like, what someone actually needs in the moment. But she had been in the hospital the night before because she kind of went into a full-blown panic attack. She had asthma. She was meant to meet up with a pastor at one of these churches who was going to help her get a train ride up to where her mother's home was. Her mother had just passed away a few months before that. And so she's like, so I'm just trying to get back there, And so when you're having these experiences, it's so easy to go, okay, is this person playing me? Are they this? Are they that? Like, there's all of that. And mind you, it's in the middle of the pandemic. So I'm like, well, let's go get food, like, let's go sit down and actually have a meal, So we go to, there's this place, right around the block. And I was like, because I was like, I can buy you groceries, or we can just go sit and have a meal. And then, you could take stuff to go. So we have this just entire dialogue. It was, I don't know, I just, like, fell in love with this woman. And then I said, well, what do you need for the train ticket? So she tells me what it is. And I don't have that on me, but I'm like, I could get it. And my office is just around the block. And I'm thinking, like, okay. So I ended up, like, reaching out to my friend who had a salon right over there. And I said, maybe I'll just get the money from them, and then I'll, just Venmo them the money or whatever. And then, so I'm doing that. And then I'm like, but now she's got to get we're in Montclair, New Jersey, and she's got to get to Newark, New Jersey. And she was going to walk. Now, mind you, it's just a tiny little thing, and it's the middle of winter, and she had stuff taken from her. She didn't have a phone, all this other stuff. So in my head, I was like, you have a car around the block, like, you can drive her. But I was going through this fear stuff. Like, is this smart? It's in the middle of a pandemic. Like, am I, getting in the car? Like, I don't know, like, all the things, like, were going through my head. And I just kept hearing, because again, this interaction that had happened with Ram Dass was exactly a year before. Literally to the day that this happened was the day that this happened. Wow. And it was like, you need to be love, just be love. And so then we get in the car, I drive, and I said, I have a car, I'll go get, and I'll, but I had to overcome all of my own fears, and is this and that, and whatever. And so we drive, and the ride from Montclair to Newark was like one I will never forget. And the things that we talked about, which were very divine, like, she wanted to understand Chinese medicine. So we were talking more about that, but I was asking her when her birthday, but she started talking about that she was a Leo. One of my very good friends had just passed away. She had the exact same birthday to the year as my friend who passed away. So it was like, yeah, I was like, are you kidding me? like, literally. And she goes, and so it was just, there was so much more that came out of it. And so we get to the Newark train station, and yeah, she goes out, she looks at me, she goes, I wish we would have met under different circumstances. And I was like, there were no other circumstances we would have met. Like, literally, like, this is how we were supposed to meet. And you have no idea how much you just changed, not my day, but like my life. Like, this 2 hours we basically spent together was, and I never could have prepared, like, you can't know what's coming, but it was because in that moment, I said, show me what I need to see. And I looked up and we made eye contact, and there it was. And there it flew, like, just unraveled right in front of me. So it was like, I always get lessons like that, where, like, to go deeper in those moments, like when you're feeling uncomfortable, like, what is this? What is this in me that's uncomfortable? And don't forget what's available by pushing through. And I have so many stories like this, like so many stories. I want to write a book just about these types of stories, because they could be quite ordinary, but they're quite significant too. So that's like an example that just happened last year. And I find in the winter, these things happen more. And I think it's because we tend to be a little bit more internal. And there's times where, like, pick your head up, what's right in front of you, who wants to engage? So I think homeless people are, a lot of them, you can look at it from one perspective, and obviously, like, I could say that as someone who's privileged and has a home and all this other stuff, but a lot of people who are homeless also choose to be homeless. Like, that's the lifestyle they want to live. And I think that's a lot of it is because they, in some ways, I think, are even older souls who are like, I am here to just be present for whatever is happening. And I don't want all this stuff that's going to condition me in any other way. And that's been one of the most beautiful things about what for a lot of homeless people, it's not everyone, don't get me wrong. People go through extremely difficult times. But it is a lifestyle. I learned that quite particularly out in Portland, Oregon, because it's a much more temperate environment. So it's easier for people to be able to do that versus here at this time of year. It's hard. It's a very hard life to live. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but like, that's in any given moment, we could have that opportunity to look deeper about what is this about? What is this bringing up in me? How can I look at it and ask myself, how do I bring love here? How do I bring love here, to this moment,
Yeah.
And
Gosh.
I think you can't lose when that happens. Even if something terrible happens, I still think you can't lose when you're in a state of love.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, it's like with every trigger, with every, limiting belief, with every fear, all of that stuff. I mean, and like you said, it's love or fear, right? It just comes down to those two basic things. So whenever we are in that state of fear, sitting with it and kind of diving deep into it and leaning into the discomfort of it, so that we can, figure out what that's about and transmute that into love.
Yeah. Yeah. And the water season, again, it coordinates with the bladder and the kidneys. So winter, the emotion associated is fear. So it's a time where our fear can be a little bit more exacerbated, but it's also a time to engage with our fear, because, the fear comes from being here, and you know what I mean? Like, it's from an animal's perspective, am I going to have enough food to get through this winter? Do I have the resources I need? So, in the Chinese astrological, we're walking into a water year. It's going to be water tiger, and black water tiger at that. And I really feel people are going to be really dealing with their fear this year. Like, it's just, but it's not going to be like the fear of like a virus. It's going to be almost the fear of other, like a lot of like their own. It's going to be a pandemic of themselves, like
The shit.
yeah, I have to deal with like, what has this all brought up in you? And really, what are we fearing? Why do we kind of live this lifestyle that's like, if you look at all the systems, a lot of it is based in fear, a lot of, these things. So it's really looking at that. How can we create things that are now based in love and support and networking and,
And do you feel like that's going to be more for like the collective in general? Maybe for people who haven't been doing that, or for everyone?
I think it's going to be, again, you can look at it like there's the general sweeps of anything, like there's a general sweep of a season, that it would bring on. But then when each of us have different blueprints within that. So, like if you're like, I'm a horse, so how would a horse versus a tiger, what is their relationship inside the, because it's about chi. and the energetics of chi. I mean, we use the animals as the expression of the chi because it gives us a little bit something to work with as how that chi likes to be expressed. But it's how the energies, you know, converge and mutate, and exactly, and you know, are alchemical, and you know, people will want to go to good or bad with that, but it just is what it is and what you choose to bring to it. You know, like, I mean, most of us who've gone through exorbitantly difficult times, usually in reflection, will go back with gratitude for that, for all that we got out of it, you know? So I think this is going to be one of those years that kind of brings certain people to their knees if it hasn't happened in year 1, 2, you know, so far.
If it hasn't happened to you yet, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
That's what you're saying.
That's it. You know, we're in all these different cycles. Like the United States, for instance, is in it's Pluto return. So Pluto has this, it's about death, you know, and rebirth and transformation. So there, you know, any of us that live here in the States, as an example, like there's that collective, you know, is going to be experiencing a different, like how we relate to government and society and build how we build, you know. So it's all about who's going to be the people who are going to come in and take stuff down, who are going to be the people who are, you know, tending the soil, who are going to be the people that are going to be constructing. Like we're all going to have a different role in that. So I just think this year is going to start bringing up like, hey, we're starting to pivot into this other world. You got to unplug from the technology of the old world and plug into this new technology, so to speak, and start understanding what's your programming for it. You know, like what are you really here designed to do and contribute? And I think once people can, I mean, trust me, that's a hard part. It's hard to unplug from this.
Oh, and, yeah.
You know, that is, it's most of us have one foot in one and another in another, you know, if not, at all times, which
I tried doing that for a while.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It didn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It's too hard.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
You got to jump in, you know, and, but you have to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know a whole lot, you know, and get out of the knowing of what something is and be in the curiosity of what's being invited for all of us. Like what is the invitation for any one of us through this process? And it can be an amazingly beautiful time, you know, but you know, we got to let go of a lot of identity. We got to let go of a lot of where we place our security and where we prioritize things. So I think that it just depends on where one lies within their own, you know, and, you know, even from a planetary perspective, some of those outer planets for certain generations were placed at very particular times. So even generationally, how a generation is going to deal with what's coming is going to be different. So wow. I just think the babies that are coming in right now, though, they're having none of what's been.
No,
like that, you know, I've just been lucky to be around a lot of births, and they're like, okay, you haven't dealt with it. I'm going to, like plutonium, Pluto, I'm coming in and I'm going to blow it up. So you have no choice, you know, to start shaping the world I need to grow up in, because I will not deal with all this crap, you know?
Yep. I feel that. They're pretty lit, just coming in, just lit up. I've seen it. Like, wow, you know, that's a crazy energy from a baby.
Exactly. And you know, even just, you know, their birth, like what happened in the birth, you know, what happened, you know, I have a patient who just went through a whole birth experience. And it was funny, the last time I was with the mother, she literally went from my office to go have the baby. But that ended up being a week-long endeavor. But I kept having this, like getting this sense from this baby that I was like, oh, you're not here to be Capricorn. You are here to be Aquarius. Like you are like, you would, you know, so literally it was like the sun went into Aquarius and finally he was ready to come out, you know? So there's just perfection in our choosing and in our choice to be here right now, and all the things that have, you know, that perfectly happened, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, when you start to actually, when you do enough internal work where you start to match with other frequencies that you are, and you start to receive the blessings in your life, you know, you just yeah, you look at everything that's happened before now and you're like, yeah, it all had to happen like that. And you can start to say, oh, well, I wish that had been different, you know, I wish that had happened sooner, et cetera, but like it's all perfect, exactly how it's happened.
Yeah. Everything is perfect, even when it looks so horrific.
Yeah. Yeah. It can appear that way.
Exactly.
Definitely. Well, so I was watching one of your lives that you did, and I'm so curious to touch on this. So you're talking about how you really want to speak up more and share
Yeah.
your truth more. And obviously, like, that's why I'm doing this channel. Um and I would love to kind of, like, before we wrap up, I'd love to get into that some more and talk about that, because you had mentioned fear getting in the way of that, shame and being vilified. And can you share more about that?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. When I was young, I was in kindergarten, I was put into a speech class because they're like, is she mute? Like, I was so introverted and so like, to the point where they were like, is there a speech issue, going on with her? And so I was put into a speech class, and when I actually enjoyed it because they were doing all these like funny, like, just probability things and whatever. But they're like, there's no reason for her to be here, like, she's fine. But I was a very internal child, very introverted, very like, I have to walk into a room and kind of observe the situation, and um, hesitant to be at the center of attention in that way. I've always been that way. But I've spent most of my life really trying to learn how to use my own voice, and because I've always felt this, like, I am certain I am reliving a life, like, and so there's this urgency in me that's like, no, in this lifetime, this must happen. So, but a lot, to your point, like, a lot of things have had to unfold in my own life. I've had to go through lots of different things, even just this, like the pandemic, and like, I had just launched a business, my practice, within the year of the pandemic, and only really had gone full time 3 months before everything shut down here in New Jersey. And so I closed down for 4 months. So it was like this reckoning of, oh, I've been doing, like, I finally, every time I feel like something's about to, bloom, like, it's like poof, something comes in. And so it's this process of really learning how to allow things, because they're really trying to guide you to where you're meant to go, however that, whatever that looks like. So for me, I feel very free inside of my practice, because I feel that my patients walk in and they're coming for a reason, like they're inviting me basically to engage with them in some process. And so most of the patients I work with, it's about the transformative process. Sure, I'm doing acupuncture, but for most patients, we're spending that first 2 to 3 sessions, like, I really want to get into, like, what's at the root of why they're here. Because if we can understand that, the body will follow. Like, we don't have to peg at, different ailments. We need to go to the root. What's the wound? And so that's something that for me, I've identified as sort of the way that I work, is I identify people's wounds really quickly and easily. And then we can go right there and start healing the source. And when that happens, then things just start to literally, from a earthly perspective, miraculously shift. And like that, so, when I was trained in school, you need to tell patients when they come in, they need 6 to 10 or 10 to 12 treatments before. And I'm like, no. If there's not something magically happening within 3, then I'm not aligned, because that's the level of, like, I want to get right in there and get moving. I do not like people reliant on me at all. Like, I don't believe in that. I believe in self-empowerment and giving people tools to really be able to heal themselves. I'm a healer, but all I'm doing is providing space. I'm not healing anybody. I'm literally not doing that. Is not my work. That's everybody's work. I'm with you for a couple hours. You have 24 hours, many days a week, between our sessions. If there's many, even that's when the work is happening, so it's, getting people to have those tools. So for me, with the voice, it felt very safe in the practice, because it was an invitation, but to start speaking out more broadly about that, like, as I was mentioning before, it can trigger people, because if they're stuck in wherever they're in their wound about something, or perhaps they've never had conversations at a spiritual level, maybe they don't, I don't know where they are. But for me, this is a time where I feel like I'm meant to be a teacher, like, to help people start recognizing that within themselves, like, so yes, I have a license that has me put these sharp little objects in people and magic things happen, but magical things happen in conversation every single day. And so for me, it's really helping people to learn how to live, and helping them to see that in other people. So we become more of a support network for each other versus a competitive, get out of my way so I can get higher than you and get, whatever. And it's like, no. Like the perfection of the moment. So I have books in me that want to come out. I have, and it's just because of the life I've lived has been very not traditional. I'm sure most of us who probably are watching this have lived a not traditional life. If you saw my career life, like all the places I've been in and out of, it's kind of unique. Like anywhere from working, at an oil company and selling oil and starting franchises around that, to working in tech, being a marketing person. I worked at Goldman Sachs, I've just been in a varied amount of places. So I've been blessed with a ton of perspective, and to me, I feel like it's upon me, because most people don't get that opportunity to do that. Like I've been able to go on, plant medicine journeys. I did a dieta in Hawaii earlier this year. Like a lot of people who have families and children and they don't have the opportunity to go do that work, And so I feel, to me, it's important for me to take that work and start giving it back to my community. I felt a calling when I was in Portland, Oregon. I was there 7 years. That you got to go back home. It's time. People at home need what you went out to go get, and now you need to start bringing it to them. And so it's a part of love. And I to me, it's right now I'm in this like place of tuning my voice, so that love is coming out, versus this see it my way, my way is the only way or right way. It's actually, I prefer to ask more questions so that people will do that. But even questions can trigger people in all kinds of ways, as I've come to find out. So, with that said, I think, and I actually remember seeing this on one of your other, calls with someone where you were talking about wanting to be, I don't know if you're still going to, I think Costa Rica to live in an intentional community. And so it made me realize, when I have a room that I do healing in, and it's intentional space, well, let me keep producing spaces. And so I created a community garden in the town that I grew up in with a small group of people. And so this past year was our first year with this community garden. So for me, it's about using my voice, but doing it through acts of love, and trying to get more bold with it. But at the same time, the boldness doesn't have to be confrontative, like it can be, it's like where someone gets hit with the tsunami of love instead. That's Ram Dass's work with me. I know is like, come back to love, come back to love, come back to love. And if the more you can put that out in the world, the more people can receive it. And the more they can receive it, the more that they can love themselves enough to actually explore themselves. Whereas right now, it's, for a lot of people, it's scary to consider the idea that I may have to leave everything I know to most of us who've done this level of work, we were always leaving, we're always letting go, and that is a muscle that has to get built. And so for a lot of people, there's been no muscle built. So I really feel, I was given this message earlier in 2021, through when I was doing the dieta, is the very basics that I practice are what are the most essential. And I take it for granted that these things I do to get myself through a moment, that people do not have those tools. And so I'm here to help use my voice to bring tools back, bring, the mystery school work that got pulled out of our education systems, help infuse that back into educational settings, give people tools so they can also use the voice that they were meant to use, So, but it also means consciously, as we, talked about it the earlier, being okay with, I also then need to let go of people who just want to be confrontative with me. Like, I don't like to say cut off, because it almost seems like, well, I'm cutting them off without doing my own work around that. Like, just to your point, like what about me is inviting that in? But we don't have to stand in the middle of, Times Square, in the middle of the road, you know what I mean? Like, and get hit by cars all the time. Like, we could do things for our own safety and protection that would allow us to use our voice in a better way. So, so that's the work. That's where I'm at in my process. And so I think it'll just be that, rather than keeping all of the stuff inside of a private practice, it's going to be coming more out in something like this, like doing, I had a podcast at one point, but, creating spaces that this kind of information and this level of consciousness can be exchanged and people can feel things, even just watching, hopefully, this conversation. It's my hopes that even all I care about is one. It's just if one person gets something from this, that's all I care about, because that means that one person will impact everybody in their network in some way. From one thing we maybe, you or I said, but like everybody, if you knew nothing else, just that the thing that you said to me, souls are choosing to be here, even if it means suffering, just to be a part of it, like allow that to have you unhook, with the need to fix people or feel guilty for your, like for your growth. And a lot of people are like, I feel guilty. I feel so good right now. I'm like, no. The people who are in the depths of it, they need us raising up, the vibration for them to be able to even hear it, so don't dive down, you gotta really honor yourself. So that's the idea, is that it's going to be coming out of the treatment room more, and more in a public way. I want to do more like online classes and just practical stuff, really, to be honest. So that's my 2022. I think it's to bring all that out for people, and also allow me to be a little bit more flexible, so that I don't need to be stuck in by a license in a treatment room, in time and space. I can have that information and use technology just like this. I used to have a negative relationship to technology, but I'm like, it could be our greatest asset if we allow it to be.
Yes, it can. Well, that's beautiful. And I'm super excited to see everything that's about to blossom in your life. So what's going to be your first book that you write?
I don't know. I have so many. But I mean, I love this divine storybook, like just this, like, how divine moments happen in the most ordinary ways, and just telling stories, and whether they're just mine or, I'm bringing in lots of stories around that, but just so people, again, practical, so people can see the practical nature of magic, like, and miracles. People tell me, that can't happen. That's not realistic. I said, well, come to my treatment room and you will see things that do not make sense all the time. It's when someone comes in and lays on the table, I specifically avoid putting needles in the place that they're coming for, because I want them to leave, have an experience and go, how did that happen? Now they're in. I always say, prepare that the first moment you walk into my treatment space, this is the beginning of the rest of your life. And I don't mean that to be egotistical. I mean that like you're about to experience something and you have an opportunity to really step into yourself. So allow that, that piece. So I'm really hoping that can come out of a treatment room in so many ways. Like, it can really create a tsunami of love on the planet.
Oh my gosh. You're so beautiful. I love you. You just have amazing energy. I just love you so much. Thank you so much for coming on my channel.
No, thank you for having me. And thank you for doing this. It's really important. And thank you for in all the ways you've been vulnerable and allowed people to see your own journey, and also your creative nature and dancing, all of it. Like it's really guided me as well. So thank you for that. And specifically, I will always cherish that very first meeting we had, because you just took me into where I needed to go in a very deep way.
Beautiful. And if people want to get in touch with you, whether, acupuncture or anything else, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, my website, there'll be another one probably soon, but is Well Essence Acu. So it's WELLESSENCE. So wellessenceacu.com. That's probably the easiest, just to go there and email me through there. I'm on Facebook. I'm on social media as well, Essence Acu. You can find me there too.
And I'll put some links in the description of the video too, so people can find you easily.
Cool.
Well, yeah, it's been amazing. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun.
Thank you. And everybody just have an amazing remaining weeks or days of winter. At least if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, just enjoy it. Enjoy every moment of it with yourself. So thank you again.
Yeah. And I hope everybody that's been watching that you've got something out of it. And until